Hi, welcome back to History in the Ancient World. My name is Dr. T. Today, we'll be going over the intellectual history of Athens and Sparta. We'll be looking at specific things like the politics, the geography, the ideas, the values of what it is that caused these events in history. We'll be looking at a 100-year time period where there was a lot of war between these two city-states. And what better person to walk through that with us, except for Trenton Kelly himself. He's a young historian, and for the times, we could even call him Baby Thor. Yeah, thank you, Dr. T. So, like you said, I'm going to be going over Athens and Sparta, and I'm going to be going over the intellectual history, basically, of this 100-year period of time, why these events happen in history. And really the reason I love this topic so much is because in Greece you can really look and see these two totally opposing columns of Greece itself. You have Athens and you have Sparta, and it's almost as like a social experiment. You have the Spartans who are borderline savages. Just they're raised to be warriors. They're raised to be able to fight in a war, and then on the opposite end you have Athens. And Athens, they're more educated, they're more sophisticated, they live next to three rivers, and so they don't necessarily have to work as hard to survive. They pretty much have a lot of their stuff aided to them right there. And so they're able to focus on a lot of these things like family and political structure and these different things like that. One question I have for you to start this off is, what was the actual relationship between Athens and Sparta at the time? They must have been pretty at odds with what you're saying about being these two columns, correct? Yeah, for sure. Anytime you're in a situation like this where there's a lot of high stress or a lot of high action, there's going to be relational tension. And one thing you can look at in this situation is, just like I was talking about, you have the polar opposites. You have almost the spoiled child of Athens that has, the wealth, the accessible resources, and then on the very other hand, you have Sparta, which works for everything. You, ever since you're a young kid, you're trained to be in the military. You do not have an option, and so that alone is going to conflict because of their personal views. Obviously, they don't correspond with each other. Let alone you throw in the fact that they're having a war with Persia right now, and Persia is the reigning dynasty, and so their immediate threat is Persia. Well, they combine to go attack that immediate threat. In the process, their military and naval power grows, and what that does is, after they've eradicated that threat, they're left to go back to their city states. And what you see is Athens begins to grow and want to create a dynasty of its own. And what happens is that causes tension because Sparta is concerned about that. And so, there's definitely not a good relationship going on between these two city-states. That makes total sense why, their relationship will be so strained. The next question I have may take a little bit more of a longer approach, but what I was wondering is, how did this end up playing out in the end? What's the story? What's the story for our viewers that happened? What are the major events that caused these events to happen? I'll just give an overarching view of the events that take place in this, and kind of why they took place. So your first thing that happens is what happens in the movie 300. You have 300 Spartans, and they are in this battle, and they fight to the death. Well, these 300 Spartans take a lot of the Persian army with them, and that's what allows Athens to win this war against Persia. But what happens is that leaves them majorly crippled, and so they start rebuilding their naval fleets, their military, their city, and they gain all this power back. Well, they start realizing, well, hey, we need a dynasty if we're going to want to take this. And so they put together what's called the Delian League, and it's a whole bunch of these other city-states that they have pretty much brought into their dynasty. And what happens is they gain wealth, they gain trade, all these different things, and they gain a massive naval force. Well, this naval force scares Sparta, and what happens is they end up restricting trade. Athens ends up restricting trade, and Corinth starts having all these riots and rebels against it, starts having these small little battles. Sparta joins in, and finally there's one battle that Sparta clearly wins, and they settle this 30-year peace treaty, or what's supposed to be a 30-year peace treaty. It ends up being a 15-year peace treaty because Athens gets zealous again to be a dynasty, and they do it this time by building this wall, and they incorporate a seaport inside of their city-state wall. And what this allows them to do is have an influx of food, resources, wealth coming in through trade. And it also allows them to be self-sufficient because they have these rivers already flowing right through their nation. And so what you see is finally Corinth, because of this whole thing taking place, convinces Sparta to join with them in a rebellion to join the war again against Athens. And you see Sparta join, and what they do is they start terrorizing the countryside around Athens, hoping that that would cause the city to, not be able to survive, but it doesn't. And what you see is Athens then goes and tries to attack one of Sparta's key cities. While they're gone, they have this massive plague that just rushes through Athens and kills 1 in 4 people, including the king at the time. And that weakens Athens enough that Sparta is able to overtake them after their loss to the city they were trying to overtake. Well, in this process, the general from Athens, who was trying to take over their city, switches over to Sparta because the Persians are paying him. And they are hoping that Sparta will win the war because they feel they have a better chance at beating Sparta than they do Athens. And so what you see take place after this is both of them are weak because Athens is weak because they got beat by Sparta. Well, Sparta spread itself too thin, and there were not enough Spartans. They had so many casualties that there were just not enough physical Spartans to be able to maintain all of this area. And what you see is Babylon the Great's father comes in and takes over this whole area, and that's what's going to set up the dynasty after this. So that's pretty much the overarching plot of what happens in this 100-year time frame. And so, yeah, that's it.